Leaving Day by Cassander Garduna. Chapter 1. Breaking Dinner Plates. In the great house where all things reside, Sula, the Blueberry King, stands atop Blueberry Hill. "Is this it? Is this all there is? What hell, what terror!" exclaimed Sula, as onlookers gathered at the bottom of the hill. "We are trapped in the dining hall. For each there is a plate set before them, and for each there is a plate to sit upon, for God has a plan to kill us all. My warriors, my wise ones, my tricksters, thieves, heroes, and villains, we must escape the dining hall. We must escape the plate." The Driftwood people debated amongst themselves as to what their plight was, and if there was anything to do about it, for a long time, until King Migka-Narut, king over all the island, spoke up. "We will build long canoes and leave this world. We will find the edges of the great house, and even those we will cross." And so they began. They built 3 long canoes and thought themselves very clever. "How will we leave the earth in canoes which cannot fly?" asked Sula. "We must wait until the next full moon and ask Yala to come down from the moon and bless them," replied Migka. They waited for 3 nights, and on the 3rd night the moon was full, and they asked Yala to join them. 3 days later she descended down to the island riding on the back of the night. Her eyes were dark and sad, her hair silver, and her face pale. She wore a thick, long-hooded coat. On each of the canoes she wrote the name of the night, and 8 days later a single baby was found in the bottom of each canoe. The babies were named Mim, Mir, and Magi. They were the first of the canoe spirits. After 3 more days they had grown into adults. The 3 could paddle the canoes on land, air, and water at high speed without becoming tired. They took great delight in taking the Driftwood people high into the air and suddenly dropping, only lifting again seconds before hitting the ground. And although the Driftwood people would scream, they liked it as well. "We now have the means to travel, but how will we know where to go?" asked Sula. "We must find Sigla the Navigator to guide us. Send out a scout to find her," replied Migka. Tegla Danami Nishgui was sent out to find Sigla. Tegla was the smallest of the Driftwood people, but also the bravest. In preparation for her mission, she put on her finest white shoes, a sand-colored cloak, and painted her face white with ash, which was the custom for young scouts. Tegla loved to roam and explore, and greatly admired the navigator, who did the same ceaselessly. Her tiny heart raced at the thought of meeting Sigla and possibly learning from her, and hearing her many stories. Sigla was at sea, not far from the island, fishing from her small houseboat when she first heard Tegla's call. "What do you need, little one?" asked Sigla. "King Migka requests your service as a guide," Tegla answered. "I can guide him anywhere he wants to go besides home. That is my curse," said Sigla. "Please tell me of your adventures," asked Tegla. "What have you seen out there, great navigator?" "Everything but home," replied Sigla. "For thousands of years I searched here and there and in the spaces in between for something, but I found only loss. Now I just fish and eat and sleep and play little games by myself. There is magic out there, but it's not what you think it is." When Tegla rejoined the Driftwood people, she felt the weight of her steps were heavier than before. That night, her people celebrated. A banquet was prepared. They danced and sang and ate and drank until a warm glow covered everything. Some speculated that before they left the world, they should destroy it. That this would end all suffering and be the moral thing to do. Some thought about the things they might miss. "I will miss the water and the fish," said Nishtawa. "I will miss nothing," said Migka. "Well, maybe games. I always enjoyed a good game." "Will there be music where we are going?" asked Snala. I suppose there is music everywhere, maybe songs we can't even imagine. Agaliska and Tagi butted in. Can Father come with us? We won't leave without him. Yes, children, everyone can go, with the exception of Nagku, who, as you know, cannot leave the forest, answered Migka. What about our toys? You can each bring one. Agaliska and Tagi ran off giggling. I will miss the hunt and the fireflies, said Hayaka. Sula asked, what if we die on the journey? They all thought about this for a while, and then agreed that, seeing as they were always bound to die, that it didn't really matter, and that they were better off not thinking about it. The next morning the tribes buzzed with excitement, eager to see something new, to face danger, to be the brave explorers they knew themselves to be. And they called this day Leaving Day. They first marched into the dark forest with offerings of food and blankets to leave for Nagku, which only annoyed the beast. They then boarded the 3 canoes, most carrying what little they owned. Some carried the tools of their various trades, others carried instruments, some packed food, and others took nothing. Mim, Mir, and Magi paddled them out to Sigla's little houseboat. Sigla greeted them happily, as she always enjoyed company. Hello, my lovelies, said Sigla. She hopped from her houseboat into Mir's canoe, which Migka also rowed. She carried a compass, a lantern, and a large, freshly caught flounder. I have thought over our journey, and where we need to go, said Sigla. And what is your recommendation? Asked Migka. The Driftwood people are clever, but not wise, so I propose we speak to someone who is wise. Ung. Lead us to Ung, then, great navigator. Sigla looked out to sea. Then, in her biggest voice, Gullah Kabruk, Gullah Kabruk, Gullah Kabruk. As she said this the 3rd time, she threw the flounder high into the air, and before it hit the water, an enormous golden serpent leapt from the sea and caught the fish in its massive jaws. The golden serpent was longer than the 3 canoes combined. Its scales glistened in the sun as it moved effortlessly through the water. It raised its head to Mir's canoe, where Sigla stood, and Sigla's reflection could be seen in its massive golden eye. Some of the Driftwood people trembled at the sight and made themselves small in their seats. Others, awed at the beauty of the creature, stood up to get a better look. Ka, my old friend, will you please open the way, said Sigla. The great beast brought its face forward, and Sigla put her hand on top of its head. It then swam some paces from the canoes. Its back started to arch out of the water, creating what looked like a golden rainbow. Its head and tail disappeared under the surface of the sea, and the golden arched back started to shift and transform. What began as a snake now looked more like a bridge, with each scale becoming a golden brick. Listen, as we pass under the bridge, you must imagine yourself a puff of smoke restlessly pacing the floor in a futile attempt to occupy space. Imagine yourself the vibration of a single plucked thread of a spider's web. Imagine yourself the glisten in the magpie's eye when it spies a shiny treasure. Imagine yourself a keyhole and hold your breath. Mir, Mim, Magi, forwards and through. Chapter 2, Where the Scarlet Birds Follow. None of the Driftwood people had ever seen Ung, but their belief in his existence was as strong and as innate as their belief in their own. They passed under the bridge into a city of rubble like none had ever seen. Trees and vines grew in and around once massive stone buildings. The leafy canopy blocked out all but scattered rays of sunlight, and tall grasses grew through once wide roads and sidewalks. Devoid of people, the silence was palpable. The canoes flew noiselessly a foot above the ground, and none of the Driftwood people spoke. They were in a new land unlike their home on the little island of Athlandrun. and all looked silent and amazed. Perfectly in the moment, the driftwood people once again felt alive. The new experience had made them new as well. Their hearts and minds had changed in seconds, and their old selves were left back on the island. Sigla jumped down from the canoe and started leading the party on foot with her lantern held out in front of her. "Where are we?" asked Migka. "We are where is," replied Sigla. "The city of rubble." Suddenly, birdsong was heard. Small scarlet birds arrived and started to move along with them. The birds watched as they moved through the city that nature had taken back. "Beautiful," said little Tegla, as one landed on the edge of the canoe. "I think they are scarlet tanagers," said Sula, who knew quite a lot of facts. "Can I play with them?" asked Agaliska. "Leave them alone," Migka said, and laughed. As they ventured further into the city, more scarlet tanagers arrived, until the trees and bushes around the 3 canoes were full of them, and their songs filled the air. "Did you feel that?" Sigla said suddenly. "The ground shook." "I thought I heard a low rumble," said Migka. "There it was again," said Sigla. "I definitely heard it that time," said Migka. The pulsing, rhythmic noise they heard seemed to be getting closer, like thunder in an oncoming storm, and the closer the noise came, the more the ground shook. Sula and Migka jumped down from the canoes and joined Sigla. "Ready your weapons. Snala, Heaka, down by me," commanded Migka. As Prince Snala and Heaka joined Migka, Snala blew a wooden whistle he wore around his neck, and all the warriors readied their weapons and stood at attention. The ground shook again as the low roar boomed. Heaka growled and bared his teeth, dagger in hand. Snala drew back an arrow. Suddenly, the scarlet tanagers grew still and quiet. "Help!" screamed Sula. In an instant, a long sticky tongue had shot out from under the ground and wrapped itself around Sula's leg. Again Sula screamed, "It's pulling me in! It won't let me go!" "What is it?" shouted Snala. Heaka, always brave, ran forward and slashed at the huge tongue with his dagger. "It won't cut!" cried Heaka. "Grab him!" exclaimed Migka as he ran forward, grabbing Sula's hand. Heaka dropped his dagger and grabbed Sula's other hand. Snala grabbed him by the waist, and Sigla seized Snala, creating a small chain. "Pull," said Migka. "What terror! What hell!" cried Sula as his leg was pulled deeper into the earth. Snala took his whistle with his teeth and blew again, and the warriors let out a barrage of arrows into the ground, which had seemingly no effect. Abruptly, the loud, low boom rang out again. The ground shook violently, causing all to lose their hold on Sula, and in seconds he disappeared underground. "You bastard! Come out and fight me!" screamed Migka. The ground quaked, and multiple tongues sprang from underneath them, taking hold of the canoes and the driftwood people, and dragging them down into the earth, until none but Migka was left. "Come out and face me, demon!" yelled Migka in an angry fit. And with this, the attacker surfaced. It was a small purple frog with large golden eyes. It croaked, and the ground shuddered. Its tongue, seemingly too long and large for its body, shot out and grabbed Migka's ankle, pulling him to the ground, where he began sliding towards the frog's wide-open mouth. "No, you won't take me," said Migka, as he looked around for something to grab onto. He spotted Heaka's dropped dagger. He quickly grabbed the dagger and plunged it into the earth. "No, no, no, not like this," he moaned. The scarlet tanagers started to sing again and flew up into the air. As Migka watched, they moved as one body and formed a red whirlwind. Quicker and quicker they flew around until the fallen leaves and some of the small rocks on the ground lifted into the air. The small scarlet birds began to dissolve into one another until there stood Beautiful, but frightening, was the unknown. He was language. He was the unseen wild places. He wore all yellow, and his face was a mirror which Migka now saw himself struggling in. "Don't be afraid, child. Just let go," said No, Migka shouted. I'm not ready to die. It's okay, child. Just let go, Ong said softly. A calm washed over Migka, and he thought, it will only be a moment. He then let go of the dagger and was swallowed by the purple frog. Chapter 3. Broken. Migka found himself alone in the dark. The pain in his leg was the greatest he had ever felt. He reached down to touch it and found the leg had been broken, and the bone was jutting out. His pelvis also felt broken, and it was hard to breathe. He smelled wet earth and could hear the muffled cries of his people all around him. I am here, he called. I'm hurt. Is everyone okay? He heard someone reply, but couldn't make it out. He then heard movement above him, and soon the moonlight broke through the wooden casket as he was pulled out of a shallow grave by Nagku, the forgetting beast. Nagku stood over him, and even in this moment he felt a mix of fear and respect. Nagku said nothing, and instead began to walk away deeper into the dark forest. The driftwood people were strewn about on the ground, most injured and all covered in mud from being buried. He recognized the cemetery. He was back on the island. He took count of the survivors, and all were there but Sula. A light rain came down that only made the mud worse. I need help. I can't stand, said Migka. Nishtwa set the bone as best as he could and bandaged Migka's leg. None of the Driftwood tribe were surgeons or doctors at all. Migka was handed a tall stick to lean on, and Nishtwa went about helping others of their broken lot. Where is Sula? Has anyone seen him? Are the children okay? Asked Migka. Tegla, Tagi, and Agalizga are fine, just scared, but unharmed. Sula is missing, though, answered Snala. Does this mean war? We must go back and kill our attacker, said Hayaka. We were not attacked. We were sent home, answered Migka. Mim, Mir, and Magi called for the canoes, and they also arose from the earth. Let's go home, said Migka. By daybreak, they were back in the kingdom at the doors of Atlandrun. What hell! What terror! There paced Sula, the Blueberry King, on Blueberry Hill, wet and covered in mud. What did I tell you? Did I not say it? For each there is a plate set before them, and for each there is a plate upon which to sit. For God has a plan to kill us all, huffed Sula. Migka, tired and wounded, looked up. Please be quiet, Sula. The end.